Hello everyone, welcome. So a little over a year ago, I made a video reading 5 sad books to see if they would make me cry. I didn't know at the time that that was going to be the first video in a whole series on my channel, doing these different reading experiments and trying out different books and categories. But ever since I made that video, I've been thinking about what I would consider to be the saddest books I've read and the books that personally made me cry. And I've made a video in the past talking about some emotional books that I think could make you cry, but weren't necessarily going to make you sob your eyes out. But today, I think I've finally put together my completed list of all the books, at least I've read so far in my life, that I would consider sob-worthy, cry-worthy, the books that I think have the highest chance of making you actually bawl your eyes out and leave you feeling an emotional wreck, but in the best way possible. Some of these books are so sad that they're gonna leave you in an emotional hangover that's just so painful that all you can do is curl up in your bed, put on your favorite comfort movie, and just lie there for a few hours. And as a masochist who loves to consume sad media, I need to have safe and easy access to all of my favorite sad movies and shows. And so I quickly want to talk about today's sponsor who makes that possible, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN service or a virtual private network that keeps your online identity safe by encrypting the information sent between your device and the internet. So essentially you can keep your personal data and identity protected, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi. As somebody who uses public Wi-Fi pretty frequently when I travel or if I go out while I'm working, I always want to make sure that my IP address is protected, and so using a VPN is essential for that. And a great thing about Surfshark specifically is that they don't monitor, track, or store anything that you do online either. But one of the things that I find personally most useful about VPNs is that you can use them to change your location so that you can have access to content outside of your own country. Surfshark makes it extremely easy to quickly change your location so that you can access an entirely new content library on streaming services and other websites. So if I finish reading a sad book and I need to watch my comfort movie, Pride and Prejudice 2005, I can change my virtual location and then it's right there and I can watch it whenever I want to. Surfshark also allows you to use unlimited devices on one account, so you can link all of your devices onto the same account so that you can be protected on any device. So you can use my code Clockwork to get 83% off plus 3 months extra for free. And they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. The link is in the description box, so be sure to check it out there to try out Surfshark for yourself. So again, thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. I do also quickly want to thank you all for your support on my announcement recently and remind you that my new journal, the A Clockwork Reader Film and TV Journal, speaking of film and TV, will be out on June 27th. The pre-order link is in the description box below, so be sure to check it out there. But again, thank you all so much for your excitement and your love and support on this one. I'm so excited for you all to have this in your hands, but if you haven't heard, yes, I created a new journal similar to my original reading journal, but this time for you to track all of your favorite movies and TV shows and everything that you watch. So yes, pre-order link is in the description box. It comes out June 27th. I'm so excited. But without any further ado, let's finally get into my list of, I believe 7, I think there are 7 books on this list, of books that will make you cry. Again, don't hold it against me if they don't make you cry. I am not the god of tears, so I can't say with 100% certainty that these books will make you cry, but I can say that these are the saddest books that I've ever read, but still books that I would recommend, if that makes sense. So they'll probably make you at least tear up, but just know, content-wise, they are depressing. Okay, so we're gonna start off with what I would consider to be objectively maybe the most disturbing, definitely the most disturbing, and sad in a very specific type of way. Some people probably won't cry at this. I think it might make them more angry. Other people I think definitely will cry when they read this. And it's a book that I always talk about and make sure to mention that there are heavy trigger warnings because it's a really, really difficult book to read. But that book is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I read this last year for one of the experiment videos, and I did not think that I was going to like it very much. After reading A Little Life in the original video, I thought that this was going to be kind of like that, where it was just going to really, really mess me up, or I just wasn't going to be that interested in it. But this ended up being, I still believe, one of the the best books I read last year and also just one of the best books I've ever read. It is so, so dark and it is extremely disturbing. And again, I will always say it anytime I talk about this book, you have to read the content warnings and you have to understand that this book is extremely graphic. It's not meant to be taken lightly. The book is entirely about grooming and a very inappropriate relationship that a 15-year-old girl is in with her 40-something-year-old professor. It's disgusting, but it's also really, really emotional. This is truly one of the saddest books I've ever read. That's why I had to include it on this list. So I can't tell you with complete certainty that it will make you sob your eyes out. I only teared up while I read this, but I still consider it one of the saddest books I've ever read because of the subject matter and just how well written it is. It makes you feel whether you want to or not. It's so hard for me to say that I loved this book because I hated the process of reading it, but I love the ultimate message of the story and the way the story approaches the subjects that it's trying to tackle. I say this every time I talk about it, but I think this book has a lot of empathy in it, even though the main character is somebody who will upset you a lot of the time. Some of the choices that she makes are infuriating, but it's an extremely empathetic book, and I think that's part of what makes it so sad to me and so emotional. It's so raw, it's so real, it hurts so badly, especially if you've ever experienced anything even remotely similar to some of the content in here. It's really, really painful and really hard to read, but I couldn't not include it on this list because it is just truly one of the most depressing and upsetting books I've ever read. But again, please know what you're getting into. Don't just read this because you think that it's fine and you can handle anything and nothing will make you upset and nothing will make you cry. Even if it doesn't make you cry, like, it's the type of thing you need to go into consciously aware of what you're getting yourself into, because it's a lot. It's a lot to handle, and you don't want to go into it unprepared. Anyway, had to include My Dark Vanessa. It would be impossible to make this list without this book. Okay, next up we have a book that I've definitely mentioned a few times on my channel already, but it's one that I still think about since I read it in 2021, I believe, but that is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I don't think it will make everyone cry, but I still consider it one of the saddest books I've ever read. It is ultimately, in some ways, pretty hopeful, but it's still so gut-wrenchingly just painful at times and so real if you relate to any of it, that it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. I think anyone who is like a queer child of immigrants in the US will feel at least some emotion while reading this book. I think it'd be impossible not to. It really just struck a chord in me. It spoke to some feelings and experiences that I have felt throughout my life that I didn't know how to put into words, and this book did that for me, and also beautifully so, because the prose is so lyrical, it's breathtaking, his writing is incredible, but the content itself is also just really, really sad too. I think in a lot of ways this book is about forgiveness and grief, and for me personally at least, those are two things that really make me emotional, especially in the context of this story. It's the very specific grief and guilt that children of immigrants, I think, often experience, and that's to me what makes it so utterly heartbreaking. And again, like I said, that coupled with the incredible writing, it just, that combination is a lot. It'll make you feel a lot, it'll make you cry. So yes, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, absolutely one of the saddest books I've read. I think it's a book that will make a lot of people cry. It's a book that I think has made a lot of people cry. I did not bawl my eyes out while I read this either. I've noticed, actually, I guess I don't cry that often while I read things. I mostly just tear up, even with things that I consider objectively extremely sad. I'm not like that with movies. Like, I cry pretty easily at movies, but for some reason with books it takes something else, like a little bit more for me to cry. But I fully shed a couple tears while reading this one. This hurt, but it hurt good. So if you still haven't read it, I highly recommend picking it up. Okay, next up we have the one book on this list that I did mention in the original 5 sad books video, because this is the one that like made me cry, and we're not counting A Little Life. Like, that's not a part of this. We all know about my feelings about that book. But this book, this made me cry. So if you've seen the video, you already know, but that book is A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman. Oh my god. You watched me cry reading this. I sobbed. This one hurt. It hurt a lot. And the thing about it is that it's so funny too. You don't expect it to be as utterly heartbreaking and emotional as it is. And I didn't expect to be sobbing by the end, but it caught me off guard and I really, really cried. This book also recently had a movie adaptation come out starring Tom Hanks. I went to go watch it in theaters with my friend because they also read the book, and so we wanted to go see the movie, and we do movie nights. So that was like our movie night one week, and it was unfortunately really bad. And they changed his name. It's called A Man Called Otto, not A Man Called Uwe. So I would never recommend watching like the new movie. I know there's an original movie that is from, I want to say like 2015 or something like that, like an older version that's actually Swedish, I believe. So it's in the original language because this book is translated. And I've heard people say that one is good, but I would never recommend the movie. The movie was horrible. The book, however, you know, it's so good. Please read it. If you don't know what it's about this pessimistic, grumpy old man who has just given up on life. He's so tired of people, he can't tolerate anyone, and he just doesn't want to be bothered by anyone or anything. And then one day he's interrupted by these new neighbors that move into his neighborhood, and it kind of just throws a wrench in his plans and things start to change. It's very found family in a lot of ways, which, as you all know, I love, and that always makes me cry. But it's another book that's also very much about grief and loss. I think we're gonna notice that as a theme in a lot of these stories, but it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking and hilarious, which, what a combination, but it makes for such a uniquely beautiful story that will tear your heart out, but it'll put it back in your chest. So you won't feel hollow after you finish reading this, but you will feel something. Definitely heavy content warning for suicide in this book. It's like a major theme in the story, and there are definitely other things in it as well, so be sure to just look up the content warnings. But yeah, can't recommend this enough. If you want like just a good satisfying cry, this is probably my #1 recommendation. Okay, next up we have another book that I believe I read in 2021 as well, and one that I think I mentioned in that emotional books video too. I can't remember for sure, but I loved this book. A lot of people I've recommended it to have gotten mad at me because they were like, you did not tell me it was gonna make me cry that much. And that is The Stationery Shop by Majan Kamali. This book, oh, it hurts. It's so painful, but I live for it. This book is a historical fiction, historical romance novel. The book takes place over a pretty long span of time. So we start out in 1953 in Tehran in Iran, and then we follow our main character throughout her life up until present day. I think it ends in like maybe 2013 or something like that. So pretty much modern day. And it's about this relationship that she develops with someone she met in her youth, and about where their relationship goes essentially throughout all of these years. I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil anything, and you need to just not know anything about it before you go into it. Truly all you need to know is that it's sad, and it's hard to read because it's so sad. I truly love this book so much. I often compare it to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, specifically because it's something that takes place over that like long span of time. So we get to watch a character throughout their life as they go through these different periods and grow and change, and have people come in and out of their life. So not so much the celebrity aspect that like Evelyn Hugo has, but we have that chronology of a character's life, and we get to witness them throughout different points in their life. So I find it similar in that sense, and because it's a little bit historical, set during kind of the same time period. But yes, if historical fiction is your thing and you like having your heart broken, this is it. This is the one. This is the one to make you cry. Pick this up next, try it out. I can't promise that you'll sob, but I can't promise that you won't either. Okay, next up we have a book that I haven't talked about in years because it's been years since I've read it, but I still, to this day, love this book so much. And I do feel like I need to reread it because there are things that I've forgotten about it, but I think about it still. And I read this in like 2015, one of the first books I'd read when I joined BookTube. And like I said, I constantly still think about it because to me this book was so sad. It was pretty popular when I'd first joined BookTube, but I don't think it ever really got full mainstream popularity, and I think this book should be mainstream popular. I think a lot of people would really like it. It's weird, but good weird in my opinion, and that is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. It's been a long time. If you've been here since the beginning, this was literally my very first book review on BookTube because I had just read it and I was utterly obsessed and in love because this was unlike anything I'd ever really read before, and it's still unlike a lot of things I've ever read. I have never found anything that's quite like Ava Lavender, and that's for a number of reasons, but I think there's a particular nostalgia and like melancholy woven throughout this book that I think makes it a different kind of sad than a lot of the books that I've mentioned already. But something about this book is just so gut-wrenching to me. It hurts me a lot when I read it and when I think about it. It's difficult to read at times. Heavy content warning for essay, which is like a major plot point in the story. I don't know exactly what genre you'd consider this to be a part of. I've called it magical realism before, but I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. But essentially it's set in our modern real world, but there is a magical component to this story. Our main character, Ava Lavender, is in every sense an ordinary teenage girl, except for the fact that she was born with wings. And we follow around Ava through her life as she goes back and tries to learn about her own family history. So we learn about her grandmother's past and her mother's past and how their lives and their choices and what happened to them has affected her in the present day. So it's a lot about family and intergenerational trauma and grief, and it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It is a very strange book. It's actually very aptly named. It's very strange, but it is also extremely beautiful and very sorrowful. Sorrowful, I think, is exactly how I would describe this book. A lot of it is about that kind of familial grief, like the grief that you feel for the people who came before you in your family and the things that they missed out on or couldn't experience, or the terrible experiences that they had but you could never do anything about it, and the guilt and sometimes resentment that can be tied to that. It just explores a lot of really interesting themes that I hadn't often seen explored in YA novels, and it's just so unlike anything else I've ever read. Like I said, be sure to look up content warnings if you decide to read the book. It can be pretty heavy at times, but it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and literally just talking about it again is making me emotional and also making me want to reread it. I know that I cried a little bit when I first read this because it really just profoundly impacted me, because this is honestly, unassumingly, I think, one of the saddest books I've ever read. Okay, so next up, this isn't technically the last book because I do have one more book that I want to mention, but it's more of an honorable mention than anything else. This is the last like official book on my list, I guess. But it's one of the most recent books I read, and that is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. There's no other way to describe it. This book is just so sad. If you don't know what it's about, we follow around our main character who is working basically as a doctor during the Syrian Revolution, as she's also trying to help her family leave the country. So just based on that alone, you know that it's going to be extremely sad. But what takes it to the next level is the incredible writing and the way that the story is woven together and the way that these characters are written and developed and their relationships with one another are developed. That's what really like tears your heart out, because you get to know them so well. Usually the books that actually really make me cry are typically book series, because I got really attached to this group of characters or something, and then someone dies or something tragic happens in the series, and then that makes me cry and that makes me emotional. So usually it's not like standalone books like this, like I'm mentioning and recommending in this video, that typically make me cry. More often than not, it's favorite series, because like I said, it's that attachment to these people and these characters that is what will push me over the edge. But with this book, I felt so much of that while I was reading it, because you really, really grow to know these characters and you grow to love them. And then it's pain, just pain. The only reason I didn't actually cry while reading this was just because of where I was at and like how busy I was and what was going on in my life externally. So it didn't actually make me sob, but if I had read it at a different time, I know it would have made me sob. I think if I were to reread it, it would definitely make me sob. And even with that, I still teared up while I read it, even though I hadn't been able to cry for weeks. And this was the only thing to actually make me tear up at all. So if that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know what will. But yeah, if you really need another just good cry, this is definitely one of my top recommendations. This is one of the ones that I really think will make people bawl their eyes out, because it's a lot. This book is a lot, but I loved it. Okay, so finally, this is the last book I'm gonna mention, and like I said, this is kind of more of an honorable mention than an actual official book on my list of recommendations. Not that I don't recommend this book, I just think most of you have already read it, so there's not much reason for me to recommend it, but I'm still gonna talk about it because I can't make a video on sad books that will make you cry, or books that have made me cry, and not include this book. Because no book I have ever read, excluding the trauma that was A Little Life, has ever in my life made me sob the way this book did, and that is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. You knew it was coming. You had to have known. Like I mentioned, there are other series that I've read that I deeply love where I cried in certain books because I came to care about those characters so dearly, and then something happens and then you cry. Like it's natural, that happens. But I consider that like a different kind of sad. It's not the same thing as like these sad books. This epilogue, the epilogue of this book, if you know, you know. Like, oh my god. This is my copy, like my original copy, which is super old. There's all this foxing on it, like it's sun damaged and everything. I think there are still tear stains from when I was in high school reading this book in the pages of the epilogue. Because when I tell you I was sobbing my eyes out, sobbing my heart and soul out. There was nothing left in here, and there still is nothing. I've never gotten over it. So yeah, I just had to mention it because I can't not mention it. Like, if we're gonna talk about books that made me cry, this is up there. This is like #1 on the list currently. Nothing's made me cry like this. I'm still on the search for another series or another book that I feel as attached to that will make me feel the way that my 15-year-old self felt while reading this book, because I need that again. I want that pain again, and I haven't been able to find it in anything. So yeah, anyway, just had to give the queen her crown because she deserves it, and she will never stop tearing my soul to pieces. But there you all have it. That is it for my list of sad books that will probably make you cry, or the most depressing books I've ever read, or books that made me cry, whatever you want to call this. They're just sad books. They made me sad, and they'll probably make you sad too. So read at your own risk. Don't blame me if you end up devastated. But also, I hope you have a great time. If there are any other specific recommendation videos you would like to see, please let me know in the comments down below, and I will try my best to make them. Once again, a huge thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and don't forget to check out the link in my description to try Surfshark out for yourself. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always, but thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!